The Amazing Digital Circus. We all know what it is, and if you clicked on this video, you have definitely seen this show. However, for the 5 people living under a rock, The Amazing Digital Circus follows our main lead, POMNI. POMNI and 5 other people were mysteriously trapped one day in a virtual world called, well, The Amazing Digital Circus. And throughout the series, we see them go on wacky adventures set up by an AI ringmaster named Kane, all while they are at risk of losing their sanity and becoming abstract. It's a pretty good show. I actually believe that The Amazing Digital Circus is one of the best indie shows we currently have in the media right now. I love the mystery of it and enjoy trying to find answers to what the fuck is going on with the circus. Like, how did they end up here? How will any of these guys escape? Is that even a possibility? So many questions. So much buildup that will probably be answered in future episodes. But the overarching mystery of The Amazing Digital Circus is not what makes this show special. What makes The Amazing Digital Circus special is its character writing. Despite this show having such an overarching plot, it's not its entire main focus. Throughout the series, we see POMNI go on adventures with these people, but throughout these adventures, we, alongside POMNI, learn more about these characters. We learn a little bit about their lives before they were trapped in the circus. We learn more about their struggles and try to understand them, and we see how each of them are personality-wise, and why all of them turned out to be that way. It's really fun, as I enjoy learning and trying to understand each character. And that's what this video is about. Today, we're going to talk about this show's character writing, and we're going to delve deep into each character. So why don't we get started? But before we get started, I do want to note that some characters haven't been, let's say, deep dive into much. This is because as of right now, with the current episodes we have, there isn't much info about them. I presume more stuff about them will come later in future episodes, but for now, those guys will come first. And then, later on, we will delve deeper into the characters who have more information known about them. Okay, got it? Got it. Let's start with this show's somewhat simplest character so far. Now, as of the making of this video, ZOOBLE is one of the few characters that hasn't really had an episode focused on them. I mean, they somewhat have, but let's be real here, they mostly share episode 3 with Kinger, so it's like 50-50. However, from the 6 episodes we have seen so far, we can pick up on some details about ZOOBLE from specific scenes or dialogue that can paint us a better picture of their character. In the first 2 episodes, we know very little about ZOOBLE. All we know is that they can be quite, well, irritable and rude to others, especially to Jax, which, yeah, let's be honest, can be quite justifiable. But this continuous irritability is what leads to their lethargic attitude towards going on adventures with the others, which is why they often opt out of them. Episode 3 is when we really start learning a bit more about ZOOBLE. In this episode, Kane has a therapy session with ZOOBLE, and ZOOBLE tells Kane that it's really not his adventures that bother them. It's the fact that they don't like themselves, especially the body that they have.
It's me, remember? I don't like myself. I hate this body. I hate all these stupid removable pieces. I just want to find something that feels good.
Despite Kane's attempts to fix this by giving ZOOBLE new parts to mess around with, ZOOBLE still hasn't found anything that really appeases them. It's quite clear what ZOOBLE is going through. They are going through gender dysphoria, meaning that they don't feel comfortable in the body that they are in. So they are struggling with finding a body that really matches who they are, which leads them to be depressed. That's some pretty nice representation of gender dysphoria, and I really love how the show has explored it so far. As of right now though, they haven't really gotten in depth about this subject with them. This has been mostly explored in episode 3, and somewhat mentioned in episode 6, as in that episode, it seems to be implied that ZOOBLE is learning to love themselves little by little with their pep talk with GANGLE. That pep talk being about Well, liking every aspect of yourself, even your flaws. Their mentions on how they used to be a tattoo artist and bartender in the human world show that ZOOBLE was the type to always try out new things. But honestly, as of right now, this is all I can give with ZOOBLE, since there isn't much we have learned about them yet. So as of right now, all we know is they have dysphoria, and I assume those internal feelings will be explored in later episodes. Oh, Gangle, Gangle, my sweet Gangle. Gangle at the start of the show is shown to be very timid, shy, and fragile. Literally, because her comedy mask is always breaking. But oh boy, episode 4, which is essentially Gangle's own episode, is one of the best things to come from the Amazing Digital Circus. In this episode, the gang goes on an adventure to work at a fast food place, and Gangle gets a new mask. Plus, she also becomes the manager of this fast food place, due to her experience being a manager in the real world. Gangle, with this new mask of hers, gains an insane boost of confidence. She becomes much more positive and outgoing, but it doesn't end there. Unfortunately, her positiveness and willingness to keep the fast food place in good shape leads her to become more insane, controlling, and overbearing, to the point where she internally breaks when people say that they like her more negative personality better. The most heartbreaking thing about this episode, though, is that we learned that throughout the entire thing, Gangle didn't actually feel that way. She didn't feel any joy, happiness, or positivity as she presented herself. She was still her sad mask self the entire time, meaning that, quite literally, Gangle masks. So that means whatever mask she could be wearing does not reflect how she truly feels. What makes this episode a bit darker as well is that we learned that Gangle at one point wanted to be a successful artist in the form of making webcomics, but she gave up on her dreams and stopped trying. This implies that something, or some people, may have deterred her from pursuing her dreams. This backstory is affirmed to us yet again in episode 5 when Gangle mentions that she studied graphic design in community college and then eventually dropped out. Going back to episode 4 though, we start to understand Gangle's depression and how she must have felt in the real world, going through the same routine over and over again, to the point where you begin to feel disassociative. Must have gotten very exhausting, and it's unfortunately very depressing and somewhat relatable, as in certain scenes you can feel the negative aura coming from Gangle just by looking at her mundane expression, which hits your emotions as hard as a truck. Haha, get it? And you know what? Speaking of trucks, towards the end, she takes off her mask and throws it out, embracing her true self, until she sadly, get it, gets hit by a truck, and the adventure ends. With Gangle, we see a huge theme of someone who needs to learn to embrace their emotions, something that Gangle often struggles with throughout the show. And this episode really highlights how that struggle affects her. What doesn't help though is that Jax is always tormenting her and abusing her, since he likes to take advantage of her really nervous and fragile personality. And in the first few episodes, she lets Jax tease and taunt her however he likes to, but it isn't until episode 5 and 6 that she starts to stand up to him more, especially with the help of ZOOBLE. For example, in episode 5, she's the one to start the vote of giving Jax a maid outfit with the encouragement of ZOOBLE, and she gains much more confidence in episode 6 with the help of ZOOBLE's pep talk, where ZOOBLE reminds Gangle that she is a person with emotions, and she doesn't always have to deal with Jax's bullshit. This pep talk would eventually lead her to gain the courage to go all out on her Tommy gun. However, despite her efforts attempting to kill Jax and POMNI, at the end of the day, she gets shot by POMNI. But something is different this time. Her comedy mask breaks, as usual, but this time, Her tragedy mask shows her smiling, something that is completely out of the ordinary. This leaves us on a very high note that Gangle is getting better with her emotions and is feeling a much more sense of joy and happiness when it comes to things, even at moments when she loses, which is so fucking awesome, especially thanks to the help of ZOOBLE. Hey, speaking of ZOOBLE, let me talk about their friendship with Gangle, because I think the friendship between the two is truly something special, especially since both characters have somewhat similar struggles. Going back to episode 6, the pep talk ZOOBLE gives to Gangle is about self-love, since Gangle mentions to them how she basically hates herself a bunch because of her flaws. But ZOOBLE mentions that she should love herself because her flaws prove that she is a real person, and she should embrace them more, regardless of what issues she has. At the very least, Gangle is still human. More human than Jax will ever be. But the one thing to point out here is that Gangle asks ZOOBLE if they've ever had to make that decision. The decision to learn to love themselves. Until she backtracks it and says,
Huh?
Sorry, I mean, of course not. You're ZOOBLE.
But from what we know about ZOOBLE, we understand that they themselves are still struggling with their self-love. And I think that's what makes ZOOBLE's and Gangle's relationship very special. Both of them are struggling with loving themselves in some form, and have developed to like the most human aspects of themselves due to their friendship. ZOOBLE struggles more with their body, and Gangle struggles more with her emotions. It's a really nice thing that balances both characters out. Overall, Gangle is a great character, and I can't wait to see how this newfound self-love that she has will be developed in later episodes. I think Kinger is one of those characters who is super underrated, and I don't think it's talked about enough how tragic of a character Kinger truly is. Kinger is very sporadic and mentally crazy. I mean, who wouldn't be from being in that circus for so long? In terms of his personality, Kinger is very forgetful, does some pretty interesting things at random, and often says things that makes no sense. That is, only if he is in light. As you see, Kinger is quite, wild on the surface. But when he's in a dark space, his personality does a complete 180. His sanity in the dark is way better. Alongside that, he becomes more rational and level-headed, and also tends to become wiser and more empathetic with others, such as in episode 3, where he helps POMNI to remain calm throughout the entire adventure. Or episode 6, where Kinger really shows how emotionally stable he can be, with him giving RAGATHA advice and all that, really showing that despite him being a little cuckoo on the outside, he really does care for the other members in the circus. The reason why Kinger is very tragic though, is due to the reason why he is a very calm person in the dark, and that's because the darkness reminds him of the last time he saw his wife, once she had been, well, abstracted. What makes things sadder is that Kinger implies that she may have abstracted due to her having doubts about their relationship. But the difference here compared to others abstracting is that his wife was incredibly calm with Kinger once she abstracted and felt his touch, which is really heartbreaking to think about, as it seems that members of the circus who end up abstracting may still have some part of their sanity within them, just as long as they are surrounded by something that reminds them of who they were before, of course. Wowee, that was a mouthful, but you get the point. By the way, this may imply that there is some form of curing those that ended up abstracting, but sadly, we won't see that answered until later episodes. Overall though, despite how Kinger acts and all the dreadful he has gone through, we know that he has the mental capacity to keep his sanity to the point of not becoming abstracted, proving that this dude is incredibly strong-minded. Somehow. As of right now, there isn't much we know about how Kinger was before he came to the circus. We know that he is the longest member there and also the oldest, which explains why he is so crazy. However, Kinger has mentioned a few tidbits about his life. For example, he has said that he studied computer science for 7 years. Oof. I have a gut feeling that is definitely going to play a huge role in a later episode. Okay, let me get into some theory territory real quick. I believe that little detail of Kinger being a computer scientist may be super important in the future. This is because Kinger can change things around in the circus. This was shown in episode 6, when Kinger basically used a cheating tactic to one-up Ragatha's health bar in that gun game. And I feel like if you put him in the dark for a bit longer, he might start revealing some stuff. However though, this is sadly not a theory video, and hopefully, in the future, some stuff about Kinger will be confirmed. For now though, we just know that he is a very tragic and somewhat mysterious person. Ragatha, Ragatha, Ragatha. Where do I even start with this one? Well, for starters, I think she's one of the most misunderstood characters. This is due to the fact that Ragatha, weirdly enough, has developed some sort of hate-dom? Especially after episode 5, just because she had a completely valid crash out. Alrighty then, what type of person is Ragatha really? Well, from the beginning, we come to know Ragatha as a very extreme people pleaser. In the first 2 episodes, we notice that Ragatha has an instant desire to be liked by Pomni, and is very worried about Pomni not liking her or getting along with her. Another thing to note is that Ragatha is incredibly optimistic, to the point where she constantly ignores or downplays the insanity happening around them. She does this to uplift her friends and comfort them, but her constant optimism and positivity are clearly very fake, and the members at the circus can clearly see right through her. And her facade breaks from episodes 4 to 6. In episode 4, Ragatha mentions to Jax that even though she despises him, she doesn't want Jax to hate her, which is a very odd feeling to have. Why would she like someone as cruel and mean as Jax? Well, it goes back to her personality of wanting the approval of others, and it really shows how much Ragatha cares about what people think of her. That is such an emotionally torturous thing to go through. Having that fear of people not liking you or ostracizing you must be awful, and it goes to show that Ragatha has deep-seated abandonment issues. In episode 5, we learn why she is like this. It's due to the fact that, well, before she joined the circus, she was part of a very wealthy family, and her mother was incredibly overbearing and abusive. It could be inferred that her trauma caused her to become that way. In that very episode, it's also implied that at one point, Jax and Ragatha were friends. We learned this when Pomni asks Jax if he had ever had any actual friends before, only for Ragatha to comment and say, "Not anymore," which Jax gets pissed about because he thinks she's mentioning something that, well, we will get into later. Once we talk about Jax, of course. This may have been due to the fact that her doormat personality may have pushed him away and broken their friendship apart. Or for all we know, it could have been Jax that broke the friendship, because he ended up being more of a dickhead. But that's for later. Once we see our gang begin to play baseball, we see Ragatha reach a breaking point, to the point where her fake personality breaks. And oh boy, she sure doesn't like it when people see her in a bad mood, and even mentions to Pomni that she doesn't want to be perceived as some sort of jerk. But Pomni tells her that it's okay to express your negative emotions. And so, she does. Ragatha crashes out on Jax for his really shit behavior, which is super valid because, let's be honest here, Jax is a massive piece of shit who really loves to torment people. Pomni tells her to calm down, but she then also ends up yelling at her because she's the one who gave her the advice in the first place. She apologizes to her and then begrudgingly apologizes to Jax. Not for the yelling though, for bringing up the thing from earlier. Wowee, the hate for Ragatha after this episode was incredibly stupid. And I think the only reason why people developed hatred for her was just because she yelled at their precious Jaxie boy. Oh my god! And don't worry, we will get into my opinion of Jax later, but just hold that thought for a few more minutes. In addition to that though, it's extremely understandable why she is reaching this point. Having to be the positive one, even with someone like Jax around, can reach its limit, you know? Now, this isn't to say that Ragatha is a completely perfect little angel. She too has her mean traits, and has treated her peers quite badly at moments. I mean, not to the extent of Jax, of course, but she still has her problems. Like in episode 4, where she gets high and tells Gangle that she likes her better in her happy mask, which really hurts my girl Gangle, man. What the f did she do? She didn't deserve this. Her toxic positivity can also cause her to dismiss the understandable feeling of absurdity from her friends. In episode 2, we see Ragatha trying to hype up Pomni for the adventure, leading her to ignore and dismiss her negative emotions throughout the entire thing. But, like I said, at the end of the day, these are just some flaws or problems she has, and all of these things make Ragatha a really well-rounded character. She's not like an awful evil monster, despite what others want you to believe. She's just an imperfect person who is genuinely trying her best. As in episode 6, she finally begins to learn from Kinger that she doesn't always need to be the one looking out for people, that it's okay to give space to the other members, and that she needs to begin to take care of herself. From this point out, it seems that Ragatha is going through her character development, and I sure can't wait to see how that plays out in the last 3 episodes. Pomni in the beginning is quite clearly meant to be an audience surrogate. We're watching and learning about the circus and its mechanics through her perspective. When Pomni joins the circus, she becomes extremely panicked and worried at the state of her predicament, and just like the audience, she begins to have all sorts of questions about the world she just landed in. And just like any other normal person, she begins to lose it, to the point where she obsesses over leaving the place. But sadly, there really is no escape, so Pomni, throughout the series, just slowly accepts her fate and adapts to the environment around her. This changes her personality from a panic state to a much more calmer one. One of the factors that helps her become more lenient about her situation is getting to know the other members, showing us how much empathy and compassion she has towards others, especially in episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6, where she converses, or tries to, with other members of the circus about their lives and personalities. At times, this can be successful, and other times, unfortunately, it's not. For example, episode 6 is an obvious example of Pomni not being successful in getting someone to converse with her. That someone being Jax, because we all know how Jax is. However, that episode shows Pomni that she can't give her compassion to everyone, and instead should put that energy into people who deserve it. And even though Jax treated her like absolute in that episode, she somehow still had concerns for him in some form, showing that deep down, she still cares about Jax. Man, Pomni's emotions sure are very sympathetic, because if someone like Jax treated me the way he treated her at the end of the gun adventure, I would never speak to them or even attempt to look their way ever again. But hey, that goes to show you how strong her emotions are. It's situations like these that give her growth and allow her to get used to the circus, as she sees that almost every member, no matter how awful they can be at moments, is human in their own right, allowing her to get used to new adventures and wacky situations much more easily, as the bonds she creates can help her cope with all the madness. Now, what was Pomni like in the human world? Pomni, in episode 5, says that she was an accountant for a supermarket chain. Whenever she got bored though, she would explore abandoned buildings for the fun of it. You know, as you usually do. Every time she did this, she would record her escapades and post them on YouTube. But no one ever saw her videos, which didn't really matter to her because she mostly did it for herself. Now, those explorations in abandoned buildings could give some pointers on how she ended up at the circus. Did Pomni find some weird place that led her to get stuck in this digital madness? That's an answer that hopefully will be given to us in the future. As of right now, Pomni is going through some pretty good character development regarding her emotions. After Jax blew up on her, she has been hanging out much more with Ragatha, and it seems that the two are going to be on much more friendly terms in the upcoming future. However, a lot of questions remain. Will she still attempt to care for Jax, or will she let him go and stick with the people who care about her? There are so many things left in the open for her, but for now, we will just have to wait and see the path Pomni ends up choosing. I guess it's time to talk about Jax, huh? Jax. What can I even say about him? My opinion has been quite clear throughout this video. Jax is a terrible person. He is egotistical, arrogant, and patronizing, and shows no empathy or shame for his actions throughout the series. And you know what? Despite Jax being super unlikable, he is the best character in the entire show. Yeah. You heard me right. If you know me personally, you understand that I love evil and awful characters like Jax throughout all types of media. However, there is a catch. They need to be well written, and Jax is one of those characters. Throughout the Amazing Digital Circus, none of Jax's actions are excused or downplayed. You're clearly supposed to not like Jax and believe he is the absolute terrible motherfucker he is. However, you also begin to ask yourself, why is he so mean? What's the need for him to inflict so much physical and emotional pain on others? And those questions do get explored throughout the show, especially in episode 5. In this episode, we see Jax change his attitude, especially with Pomni, who seems to be much more talkative and conversive with. Now, keep in mind, before episode 5, Jax did show some hints of kindness, you could say, towards Pomni. For example, in episode 4, Jax asks Pomni how she's doing, and Pomni, being surprised by this, just responds with, "I'm fine." And hey, of course it's shocking. At that point, we know Jax to be the mean one, but it seems that this cruel rabbit has a very sentimental side to him. Going back to episode 5 though, Jax asks Pomni if Gangle is capable of being happy. He wonders this because her happy mask is always breaking, and hanging out with ZOOBLE is not going to solve the issue quickly. The conversation continues, and Pomni says that she didn't think Jax cared about other people. And Jax, in his usual emotionally suppressive self, says,
No, yeah, you're right, I don't.
Scenes like this continue throughout the episode, especially when Ragatha brings up the fact that he doesn't have any friends anymore, something that really pisses him off. Keep in mind though that Ragatha was referring to herself, and by mistake, Jax thought she was referring to another friend he had in the past, a friend who is heavily implied to have shaped him to be the way he became. That friend is first revealed in episode 5, towards the end of the intermission, that friend being named Ribbit. There is a huge possibility that Ribbit and Jax had a very blossoming friendship before they abstracted. Even in episode 6, Ragatha states that Jax was not always like this. Even after Jax and Ragatha's friendship, he started growing a much harsher personality. Anyways, going to episode 6, it's quite clear that Jax blames himself for Ribbit's abstraction, as Ragatha accuses him of trying to give Pomni the same fate, which obviously causes him to freeze and then shoot her out of complete anger. You know, speaking of episode 6, let's talk about that episode, shall we? Admittedly, I made this video as an excuse to talk about this episode. Hope you don't mind. In this episode, Jax and Pomni team up for the gun deathmatch game. And throughout the episode, we learn more about why Jax is the way he is. For example, he admits that he sees the other members as cartoon archetypes to feel better about himself, and also to not make himself go crazy. Another thing to note is that Jax talks about loving to take advantage of the fact that the Amazing Digital Circus is not real. So, to him, it's pointless to hold on to your humanity, and just take the easy route of taking advantage of the wackiness of the circus. Like, what's the point of caring about hurting others or being a morally good person when, at the end of the day, all of it isn't real? Kinda unrelated, but I do like how this theme is central throughout the entirety of the episode, as each character in this episode has dialogue that conflicts with Jax's philosophy. This makes this episode way more impactful, as we see how important it is for everyone to keep their humanity, compared to Jax, who has lost it, and is the main factor for why he is so awful. Ironically though, despite his statements, we do see him gain that humanity. Throughout the game, Pomni and Jax develop a short-term bond. Jax begins to open up more about his personal fears, such as his triphobia, and they become a pretty good team together. Despite this strong bond they have grown accustomed to, Jax, being Jax, doesn't seem too comfortable about it. So he begins to act like his old self again, telling Pomni that the friendship they built meant nothing, to the point of taunting her for believing something was actually there. Pomni asks Jax what would happen if she abstracted tomorrow, and Jax, trying to be tough and tells her that he would move on. This leads Pomni to begin attacking him, and as she is attacking him, he does not fight back at all. The fight ends and Pomni asks Jax why he did not fight back. Of course, everyone knows how this scene plays out. He doesn't respond and instead tries to be the big evil little emo bad guy. All jokes aside though, this scene is one of the best scenes throughout the entire series. There is no background music, no noise, nothing. Just Jax going on his tirade on how the others are just toys that he likes to mess around with. But towards the end of this episode, we see Jax feel remorseful for his actions, to the point where he begins having a panic attack over it. Holy shit, guys, did the Amazing Digital Circus do an accurate panic attack scene? No way! Additionally, he even tells himself that he looks stupid, acknowledging that the behaviors he has built are really not that great. Overall though, as you can see, Jax treated Pomni that way because he's terrified of attachment, and does not want to go through the pain and suffering of losing another friend in the same way he lost Ribbit. And due to him having this blame for causing Ribbit to abstract, he probably doesn't want Pomni to suffer the same fate, so he pushes her away in the worst way possible. Now, I need to say this as a reminder, because a lot of people within the Digital Circus fandom are fans of Jax. And hey, don't worry, it's completely fine to love well-written, morally awful characters. But I guess a lot of people don't understand that concept, because I see a lot of babying and excuses when it comes to Jax. Like, dude, just because you really like a character does not mean you need to excuse them. Just admit that it's okay to like morally questionable or terrible characters. Trust me, you are not a bad person. You just like good writing. And please, for the love of God, even though Jax does have an avoidant attachment style, and it's actually like really fucking depressing, it's still not an excuse. It's more of an explanation for why he is the way he is. Got that? Okay, good. Jax, at the end of the day, despite him being a little is still my favorite character of all time, and I can't wait to see him suffer the consequences of his actions in future episodes, because that mother deserves it. And on top of that, I also can't wait for the series to explore his feelings of resentment. In summary, The Amazing Digital Circus has amazing character writing. Each character is explored very well, and I love how intimate each one feels. Because despite all the internal conflict each character has, we see each of them overcome these problems in their own different ways. A cool thing too is that each person throughout the show can be relatable in some aspect, and unfortunately, that does include Jax. Not his abuse though, I hope not. But the avoidant attachment style is something a lot of people struggle with, and some sadly take the route that he does. I'm not saying every person with avoidant attachment style has, like, the issue Jax does. You get what I mean. Others actually take a healthy route to deal with the issue and actually work on their problems, unlike him, but you get my point. On top of that though, even if you can't relate to each character completely, some of their issues and solutions can help you a lot in your own life. For example, I don't have abandonment issues like RAGATHA does, but Kinger's speech towards her really hit me hard, as it's a reminder that just because people may need space, it doesn't mean that your relationship or friendship is coming to an end. It's okay to give that friend or partner the space they need to take care of themselves, and also take care of your own self. As of the writing of this video, it has been announced that episode 7 of the Amazing Digital Circus will come out on the 12th of December of this year. From the teasers we have gotten, it's been quite clear that this is going to be a beach-focused episode where a gang gets to relax and chill, and Jax can mope and about his actions by himself. Another thing to note too, after episode 7 comes out, there will only be 2 episodes of the Amazing Digital Circus left. I won't deny, I will be very sad to see this show end, but despite that fact, I'm excited to see how the Glitch team ties up the bow on this very explorative story. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Sorry for not uploading as much. I have been working on this very big video on a specific webcomic, and my god, researching for it has been a pain in the ass. But I do want to announce that due to the information overload that the comic has, it will be put into a 2-video parter, so make sure to keep an eye out for that in the future. Overall though, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to tell me your thoughts in the comments below. What aspects of the characters are you excited to see explored in the new episodes? Who are your faves or least faves? Who do you relate to? I can't wait to see what you guys say. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a good day and night. Bye bye!